It's often said that only about 1/10 of an iceberg is visible above the water, with the remaining 9/10 hidden in the murky depths. And weirdly enough, that's also kind of an appropriate description of scandals, because at any given time, we'll only see a certain portion of what's actually happened, and even then, that might not be the whole truth. Lots of other things may have happened in the dark, hidden behind closed doors that we are not privy to, and may never be privy to unless somebody does a proper, deep and independent investigation, or someone messes up in some way, possibly by firing certain people and not covering their tracks for their historical actions. Hi, I'm Rob, and welcome to Gossip News, and today we're kicking things off with said scandal, and, well, you know how things have a habit of escalating while you're not looking? We haven't really been focusing on the Activision Blizzard lawsuit for the last couple of months because it kind of got boring, things were ticking over, we weren't sure how things were going to end up. Some explosive things have happened which involve the Governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Now, for some reason, Gavin Newsom fired the Chief Counsel of the Department of Fair Employment and Housing in California, which is the government organization that has filed a massive lawsuit against Activision Blizzard for all the wrongdoings they've committed in the past. In response to that, Melanie Proctor, Jeanette Wiper's assistant, has resigned and sent an email to all of the staff. And in that email, she makes certain allegations about the governor and his office. According to the message she sent to all the staff, the office of the governor repeatedly demanded advance notice of litigation strategy and of next steps in the litigation. As we continued to win in state court, this interference increased, mimicking the interests of Activision's counsel, which suggests but isn't definite evidence of collusion between the governor of California and a major corporation to circumvent criminal proceedings or legal proceedings, which, as far as I can tell, is a criminal offence or a federal offence of some sort. But chances are nothing's going to come of that because one is a governor and one is Activision Blizzard, who Microsoft are hoping to take over. Since that email, representatives from Newsom's office have come forward and stated that claims of interference by our office are categorically false. The Newsom administration supports the effective work DFEH has done under Director Kevin Kish to enforce civil rights laws and protect workers, and will continue to support the DFEH in their efforts to fight all forms of discrimination and protect Californians. Which is all fine and well and good, but it's come from the office of a politician, so you can be guaranteed it's about 90% bullshit. Now, I'm not the only one who thinks that, because a certain managing editor of GamesIndustry.biz has written an opinion piece on this. I'll link to it in the description below, but the title I absolutely adore: Did Newsom Californicate with the Activision Blizzard suit? And it's part of their ongoing This Week in Business column. It's written by Brendan Sinclair. It's a really interesting piece. I suggest if you are interested in what's going on with Activision Blizzard and you want to see just how far this rabbit hole goes, have a read of it. There's stuff in there that relates to another lawsuit which, weirdly enough, got settled for a much lower amount than what should have been offered, given Activision Blizzard's power and status and wealth. But that didn't happen, and there are reasons, again, as to why that didn't happen, which Brendan Sinclair actually investigates. To me, it smacks of a lot of boardroom dealings with friends, or the business side of friends with benefits. Let's put it that way. Personally, as long as that current board of directors is there, as long as Bobby Kotick is there, I don't want to touch anything from Activision Blizzard. It's not boycotting, it's simply a moral choice. I do not want to put my hard-earned money into their pockets. Simple. Anyway, another company that is potentially on a slippery slope. Square-Enix. Recently, the president of Square-Enix, Yosuke Matsuda, did an interview with Yahoo Japan, and in that interview, he reiterated his desire to make play-to-earn blockchain games. He was severely criticized for releasing an open letter committing to the polarizing tech trend earlier this year, and he's kind of doubled down on that. What he says is, in the future, we would like to try our hand at providing autonomous game content. Until now, in most games, we provided the content as a finished product and the players played that content. However, there are a certain number of players in the world who want to contribute to making games more interesting by creating new settings and ways of playing. He added that, in the future, we want to utilize the power of these people to create games that will continue to evolve. If, instead of relying on goodwill, we can also provide incentives to those who contribute to development by utilizing technologies such as blockchain, there is a possibility that innovative and interesting content can be created from the ideas of users. So, what he's talking about isn't a company-made NFT or something like that. What he's talking about are things made by people who play that game. It's interesting the angle he's taking, which is very different to the angle that Ubisoft took. Ubisoft basically said, we're going to make our NFTs and we're going to sell them. Whereas it looks like Matsuda is saying, we're going to let players who play these games make their own content and sell that as NFTs within the game. Now, I'm not sure how that's going to work logistically, and there has already been backlash from content creators, developers, and general fans. I'm not saying that Matsuda is right, but I'm also not going to say he's wrong. I think NFTs are something that aren't going to go away. And if they're not going to go away, then you have to find a way for them to work in a way that fits with what everybody is happy with. There has to be a compromise point, and I think I can see where that could be as a possibility, theoretically. There are other avenues in which you can make NFTs work with video games that would make players happy. But I'm not going to go into those because that's for a separate discussion I'm going to be having on Patreon as an exclusive. I'll make that the first episode, and it will be all about how NFTs could possibly work, talking more about what Matsuda is possibly aiming at when he's talking about player-driven and player-created NFTs, and also speculating about how logistically those could work. There's a lot to pick out, so I'm going to need to dedicate an episode of its own to that. Anyway, moving on to other stuff from Square-Enix, we are going to stick with Square-Enix for this and the next story. Yosuke Matsuda, in that same interview, also said that Japanese studios shouldn't try to imitate Western developers. And again, this kind of frames an idea and a discussion that I've been having with some of my colleagues and some of my friends over the years about the difference between Eastern and Western developers. According to Matsuda, nowadays the games market is globalized. The domestic market used to be big, but now it is behind China and the US. If you are not recognized globally, you are not in business. But, interestingly, if Japanese developers try to imitate Western games, they cannot make good ones. The designs of the monsters and the visual and audio effects are all still somewhat Japanese, and players around the world know that this is what makes Japanese games good. He added, overseas markets are important, but it is not enough to only develop for them. And he's absolutely right. The bizarre thing is that Square-Enix have done stuff for the overseas market, the likes of Tomb Raider, and Marvel's Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy, and things like that. Those have clearly been targeted at the Western market. And then they have stuff like Final Fantasy XIV and the entire Final Fantasy franchise, Triangle Strategy and Kingdom Hearts and all the other stuff, which has a very, very Japanese Eastern flavour to it. And then you have their attempts at making something that would appeal to a Western market but made by people from Japan. Things like Babylon's Fall. Now, here's the scenario. You have a game published by Square Enix, developed by Platinum Games. It should be a knockout smash, but Babylon's Fall is such a dull game that this week it dropped to below 10 people playing on PC. And at that point, you have to wonder why the servers are even open. In the last 30 days, the average player count has only been 137 simultaneous people. It's one of the biggest flops in gaming history, and I have no idea why Square Enix continues to put themselves through this kind of emotional ringer. Marvel's Avengers was a live service flop. Babylon's Fall is a live service flop. Maybe it's time for Square Enix and for the developers themselves to go back to the drawing board and re-examine what it is they want from a live service game. And then go and ask the fans what they want from a live service game. Maybe that's something you should be doing. Ask the people what they want and give them what they want. That's how you make money. Speaking of money, a couple of companies have been making money for nothing. And those companies are Sony and Nintendo. See, here in the UK, we have this thing called the Competitions and Markets Authority, CMA. They're a bloody good organisation because they examine the legalities behind certain aspects of business and contracts and things like that. And one of those aspects is subscriptions. Now, the Competitions and Markets Authority examined certain subscription services like Game Pass and PlayStation Plus and whatever the hell Nintendo's offering these days, and they found all those services to be wanting. This is according to an investigation by the Competition and Markets Authority that lasted 3 years. It started in April 2019 and officially ended in April 2022. They presented their findings to Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo because their investigation was all about auto-renewal of subscription services and why these companies weren't being transparent with people who were subscribed to their services, why there weren't things like auto-cancellation for people who'd not been using the service for a certain period of time. Now imagine the scenario. You've basically forgotten that you have a subscription to a service because you no longer use that service, but you're still paying for it. It's still going from your bank account. It could amount to hundreds of pounds or hundreds of dollars every single year. That's basically where the CMA are coming from. Microsoft changed their subscription details and their agreements back in January of this year. After the CMA presented their findings, they said, yep, we're going to be more transparent, we'll change how we're doing things with Game Pass, we'll change how we word things, we'll let people know if their subscription hasn't been used for a while, do they still want it, do they want it refunding, do they want to renew when it comes to renewal time, all sorts of things like that. And that's a good thing. That shows somebody is actually paying attention. Sony and Nintendo have also decided to make those changes as well, according to the CMA guidelines, with a few tweaks here and there. But they're doing it now, so they waited 3 months to do this. And my main question is, why did you wait 3 months? It'd be interesting to know, wouldn't it? Why did these big companies like Sony and Nintendo wait 3 months to save people money? I'm curious. That said, I'm pretty sure no answer is going to be forthcoming. Sony and Nintendo don't really strike me as the types of corporations to let everyone know what they're doing. You know, that mythical thing called transparency that some companies really tried to adopt and other companies just say, no, we're not going to do that because we know best. You consumers don't know best. We know best. We know what you want. And you don't want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Anyway, leaving those questions for Sony and Nintendo to answer, because eventually they probably will have to. Microsoft also have an interesting idea for integrating ads into free-to-play games. Now, at the moment, advertisements in free-to-play games are very intrusive. They take over the entire screen. You have to click on a little cross that appears after a certain while to close those ads. It's a hassle. They're intrusive. They're in your face. I don't like them. What Microsoft are doing is looking at these ads from the perspective of product placement. In-game static things that show specific products or services, and there will only be a small number of them in specific games. That's according to Microsoft. And I think this is something that could actually work. Now, the reason why I say that is because when you play a racing game, you already have adverts in that racing game on the cars or around the track. Same with football games. You'll have certain adverts around the pitch in a football game. With 2K's basketball games, they have ongoing adverts for the NBA 2K series, and those update and change over the course of a season. And then there was the famous Burnout Paradise Barack Obama election boards. Personally, I think Microsoft are actually on to something, but I don't think it's applicable to every game. I think games that are in urban environments or games where you have lots of neon advertising, that sort of thing, yes, those could work, but I don't think you're going to get a massive billboard or advertising hoarding in a game like Red Dead Redemption or Assassin's Creed Odyssey or something like that. You're not going to see it. Anyway, here we are at the end. Yes, I know it's been a little bit light with the news. That's just the way of things, and also the way of what I find interesting I'm going to talk about, because it's my show. Deal with it. If you have any thoughts about any of the things that we've talked about today, leave us a comment below. As I said, my Patreon exclusive stuff is coming up soon. I'll be back on the next episode of Gossip News or on the next Impossible Mission, whichever one comes out first. Until then, thanks for watching.